Pascal's triangle.
Oh yeah, so he invented a lot of, he did a lot for mathematics and science. And so I know that you talk about some of that, and I actually don't know much about that part of his life, but good job for remembering that. Anything else you remember about Blaise Pascal? So you can see here that he lived between 1623 and 1662. How many years ago is that? How many years ago was he born? 1623.
300.
Ah,
I know 400.
400 years ago. He was born 400 years ago. And so he was a scientist, but he also had a special encounter with God, and that made him connect the dot between science and God. He also confronted the period where he was born was a period where reason was celebrated. So people started, science started to develop, mathematics. There was a lot of studies of biology, the anatomy, medicine started to develop. So Charles and Mannix, that will be your one morning, okay? And so everyone praised reason. It was like such a beautiful discovery for everyone to realize that they can know how the body works. They can know, before that, they used to rely on maybe superstition or medicine that was like, oh, I heard this can work to heal your body, and I heard this can help for this kind of, but they really didn't understand how sickness worked, how the body works, how the body heals, and all of these things. So it was really wonderful for everyone to discover, to learn more about all these scientific things. And so they started to idealize or to make the mind an idol, to make the mind their god. And so reason was basically how they called anything with the mind. They wanted to reason everything. They wanted to make sense of everything. Well, Blaise was a scientist, but he also knew that everything came from God. And so well, let's start reading actually. We'll go around and you'll all read a paragraph, okay? So I don't know all of your names. Maybe we should introduce ourselves. My name is Marianne Wadrick, and so I teach French and music at the school, and so I haven't met all of you, because not all of you is part of the school, and not all of you is in French and music, but do you want to all introduce yourself before we move on? You want to say your name?
My name is
Brooklyn, okay.
My name is Celia.
Celia, so do you want to say your grade too? What grade are you in, Brooklyn?
7th, and I just started 8th early.
Okay, and Celia? 7. Joshua, do you want to introduce yourself?
My name is Joshua, 6th.
6th grade.
William, 10th grade.
10th grade.
Sully going into 9th.
Sully, okay, nice.
Sully going in the 7th.
7.
Isaiah going into 3rd.
Isaiah, nice.
My name is Maddox, and I'm going into 3rd.
Huh?
My name is Charles, and I'm technically going into 4th.
Okay.
My name is Oliver.
Oliver. And what grade?
I'm kind of bouncing around. I'm going into algebra 2, and I think I'm going to be just doing some. I think I might be in like the 7th grade class. I'm not quite sure, but
Around 7th grade, good. How about you?
My name is Corbin, and I'm going into 5th.
Nice.
My name is Betsy, and I'm going into 7th.
Betsy, nice.
My name is Anne, and I'm going into 7th.
Annie?
Anne.
Anne or Anne?
Anne.
Anne. Okay. E. No, sorry?
it's Anne.
Sorry, you see, my first language is French, so sometimes I have difficulty with English names. How do you write What's your name?
I'm Maya and I'm going into
Ninth? Nice, Maya. Okay, good. So Brooklyn, do you want to start reading the first paragraph here in our Blaise Pascal text? Why not? Celia, how about you start and then Brooklyn will go next? Oh, I see. Well, it's a good practice. Celia, you want to go?
Who needs God? Man can make it on his own. So claimed reason, the philosophy that captured the imagination of 17th century France. Its companions,
Champions. Voltaire.
Voltaire, and despots, among others, tried to fashion a worldview ruled completely by reason.
There you go. So that explains what I was telling you. In 17th century France, everything was ruled by reasons. Voltaire is a big name from that era, and Descartes is also. Anyone knows anything about Descartes? Yeah.
Not very much.
Good.
All I know is his name and when he was born.
Okay.
But I forgot that.
Okay, yeah, so we'll study him a little bit more tomorrow probably. So all of these people claimed because they started to know so much about science, about man, about life, they thought, well, now that we all have all that knowledge, we don't need God. We can make it on our own because we are starting to understand everything on our own. However, Joshua, you want to read the next paragraph?
French mathematician and physicist Blaise Pascal, raised in the heyday of
Enlightenment.
truth, found a reason
Inadequate.
last step is to recognition that there is an infinite number of things that look beyond it.
There you go. So that's one of Pascal's realization. He says, okay, well, despite the fact that he lived in those days, and despite the fact that he was a mathematician and a physicist himself, so he was part of the group of people who sought to understand science, to understand life, but he says, reason's last step, so basically, when you keep going further in reason, you'll realize that there are an infinite number of things which are beyond it. So as you keep on looking into reason, you keep realizing there are an infinite number that are beyond it, an infinite number of things that are beyond reason. And then he concluded, you want to read the next quote, Joshua?
He concluded, the heart has reasons which reason does not know all.
At all. Yeah, and that's the quote that you have at the top. The heart has its reasons, which reason does not know at all. Did you ever hear that quote?
Yes.
Yeah?
Yeah?
Now.
It's a famous quote. It's a famous quote that people use to explain love, or to say that love goes beyond reason. And so nowadays we use that quote to express the opposite of what was expressed in those days, that reason was the ultimate thing. And so this is something that Blaise Pascal brought up. The heart has its reasons, which reason does not know at all. And so basically he's bringing us back to something that is deeper than reason, the heart. And because our heart is created by God, the heart has reasons. So what goes on in our hearts is something that the reason cannot understand. And that's basically the point of that quote. Do you understand it? Now I'm going to tell you this quote in French because Blaise Pascal was French, and so this quote he made it in French, and then it was translated in English for English speakers to understand. But it's a famous quote in French. And so you'll get to learn. So if you have a notebook, write it in your notebook, or else you can write it on the other side of your paper so you can keep track. Raisons que la raison ne connaît point. So you can write it down and then I'll dissect it for you and explain to you all the French words.
And in the 10th word, right next to A, what is that?
This?
Yeah.
It's an I
Oh, okay.
with
that's
accent circonflexe.
Yeah,
So this is a kind of accent that exists in French.
okay.
So it's not a normal I, it's just an I with a little hat on top. Okay, so based on the English version of that quote, what do you think cœur means? Heart, yeah. The heart has its reasons. What do you think raison means? Reason, yeah. The heart has its reasons, which the reason does not know it all. So we have reasons, so the reasons plural and the reason singular. And then connaît is to know. And ne point is two negative particles, so it means does not know. So the reason does not, ne point, does not know, connaît. So le cœur a is a simple letter, but in French, in this case, it means have. The heart has. Le cœur a, c'est, it's ses raisons, its reasons, that the reason, la raison, does not know at all. So basically, it's just crushing that whole mentality that reason is the most important thing to master, because it says the heart, in us, in our hearts, there are things that the reason doesn't know at all. So it's you know, it's it can look very impressive to go so far with your reason, but within yourself there's already a bunch of things that reason cannot figure out at all. So this is a statement that soon became the chief critique of rationalism and the starting point for a defense of the Christian faith that still influences people today. Now, this was meant to defend the Christian faith, But this quote is often used today to defend love. And then instead of idealizing or instead of making the reason an idol, it makes love an idol. Whereas we want God to be our idol. And so you know, it's been misused, but it's good to know where it came from. So let's practice saying it together so you can practice the French pronunciation. Le cœur a ses raisons que la raison ne connaît point. Le cœur a ses raisons que la raison ne connaît point. Que la raison ne connaît point. Good. Charles, you want to read this from beginning to end?
Le cœur a ses raisons que la raison ne connaît point.
Très bien. Que la raison.
La raison.
Say it again, second line.
Que la raison ne connaît point.
Good. Who would like to try it? Who will be brave? Let's do it by table. Let's try this table on this side together. Okay? Ready? Le cœur a ses raisons que la raison ne connaît point. Good job. The table in the back. Ready? Le cœur a ses raisons que la raison ne connaît point. And this table to the side, including Liam. Le cœur a ses raisons que la raison ne connaît point. Good. Okay, well, let's keep reading about Blaise Pascal. Liam, you want to read the next section, Scientific Prodigy?
Pascal's mother died when he was 3, and his father moved the family from Clermont-Ferrand, France, to Paris, where he homeschooled Blaise and his sister. By age 10, Pascal was doing original experiments in mathematics and physical science. To help his father, who was a tax collector, he invented the first calculating device. Some call it the first computer.
Good. Sully or Bella, do you want to read the next paragraph?
No.
No, you don't like
No.
Who wants to? Mannix? Okay.
Where do I go?
With this last invention,
Where to the type of multiple talents? Yep. I know.
with this last invention, so
Yeah.
that's the fifth
Yeah.
line from the top second page.
With this last invention, he made a name for himself. At age 19, he began his richly diverse scientific career. He tested the theories of Galileo and
Torricelli.
who discovered the principle of barometer, culminating in his famous law of hydraulics, which states that pressure on the surface of a fluid is transmitted equally to every point in a fluid. He
Does
added-
anyone know about this law of hydraulics?
Nope.
No? I don't know it either, because I'm not a scientist, but it seems to be important enough that they mention it here, so you may want to look it up
I
and,
know a little bit about it.
yeah, you may want to look it up and ask Mr. Tarfa next time you have a chance if you don't understand it. It seems to be related to the use of the how do you call this, barometer? Barometer. Do you know what a barometer does? Humidity. It measures the humidity in the air. So usually the humidity, you know, when it's on a day like today, it's probably more humid outside because it rained a lot the last few days than at the end of the summer or in July when it's really dry. So it calculates the humidity in the air. And so that's probably how it's connected with the law of hydraulics. Hydraulics, do you know what hydra would relate to?
Robot.
No,
Water
water.
The water and pipes and how.
Yeah, hydro comes from, I don't know, does it come from Greek?
Yeah.
Hydro, it means water. So anything that has that kind of hydroelectricity is electricity produced with water. Anyway, so anything that you see, any word that you see hydro in it would be related to water. So the law of hydraulics would have something to do with water, which makes sense connected to humidity. Okay, and then Mannix, do you want to continue where you left it?
Oh yeah. He added important papers on the vacuum, on the weight, and the density of air, and the arithmetic triangle.
Is the arithmetic triangle, maybe that's what you were mentioning. Is that what Mr. Tarfa maybe mentioned
Nope.
yesterday? Huh?
Nope.
No?
He never said arithmetic or anything.
But was that, you talked about a triangle.
It's probably not Pascal's. It doesn't really sound like Pascal.
Same idea. It's Pascal's triangle.
There is
The
a Pascal.
equation for finding the sides length of the sides of the triangle.
Oh,
A
is it connected to Pythagoras? In French we call it Pythagoras, the triangle.
the triangle A squared equals B squared plus C squared. I think that's
Oh, so maybe they're all connected. So anyway, those are all fun things to look up when you have a chance. And then keep going.
He developed the theory of probability, which is still used today. He invented the syringe, a hydraulic lift, and it is credited with inventing the wristwatch and mapping out the first bus route in Paris. It is said Pascal was embarrassed by his multiple talents.
Okay. So then the next section is about his encounter with God. Charles, you want to start that? The night of fire?
Okay, but how do you finish the whole story?
Yeah.
I can read it again.
Charles, you can read where we are at. Night of fire.
The whole story can be read, or
The
just
first paragraph.
okay. All the while, Pascal was exploring the spiritual world, which was undergoing a revolution across the globe.
Pietism. What is pietism?
Not pie?
No, it has to do with, I don't know how to pronounce this word. Piety? It's to be,
P-I-E.
it's basically to pretend to be very religious. Like, the religious movement in that era was to, say a lot of prayers and look very religious, and then you may get closer to God if you show a lot of those kind of, signs. Okay?
Flourished in Germany and Wesleyan lines spread through England. Catholic France was feeling the effects of Jansenism, the form of Augustinism.
Yeah, those are all theological words that can be confusing, but it basically,
Augustinianism.
it taught predestination and divine grace rather than good works as vital for salvation. So there are different branches of Christianity that emphasize different parts of the Christian walk, and some people put a lot of emphasis in good works, and good works would help you to get closer to God. And what he explored was divine grace and predestination, which which takes, what goes away from all the good works. Okay, so then they talk a little bit more about all of these things, but then let's skip a paragraph. Who would be willing to read next?
He wasn't done. You read the rest. She read the rest.
Yeah.
Oh.
Would one of you ladies like to read a part of a paragraph? Sure. I want to read, then on November 23rd.
Then on November 23rd, 1654, Pascal experienced a definitive conversion during a vision of the crucifixion.
Keep going.
From about 10:30 in the evening until about 12:30 fire. God of Abraham, the God of Isaac, the God of Jacob, and not of the philosophers and stubborns. Certitude, feel, joy, peace. He recorded the experience called the memorial on a piece of parchment, which he carried with him the rest of his life, sewed inside his cup. He began a lifelong association with the Port Royal, though he, unlike his sister, never became a solitary.
So, his sister became a nun. In those days there were a lot of, some people would isolate themselves in a nunnery or a convent, and so he had that crazy experience with God. Yeah.
Remember when we went to Montreal and we went to our uncles, and then we were going back and we saw the burned down memory?
Yeah. Yes. So.
Someone burned down the nunnery.
Yeah.
And no one was in there. Someone else was.
Yeah. So so where I'm from in Quebec, a lot of the small towns were built around the Catholic Church. Every small town had a Catholic church, and then attached to the Catholic Church was the presbytery, which was actually the house of the priest, and everyone who the priest and the deacon, and anyone that worked in the church. But there was also across the road, there was the nunneries, or the convent, where the nuns lived. And the whole village was basically run by the church, the nuns, the priest. And that's how it was until 50 years ago. But nowadays, a lot of those convents are empty, and so they turned it into a senior living home. But there were a lot of structural problems, and so they ended up burning it down because it was.
No, actually, you told me that a bad person came to burn it down.
Well, the word on the street is that the owners of the building made it look like it was a legitimate fire, but it was maybe a fire because it was better for the insurance to just burn it down than having to destroy it. So it was not a clean situation. Anyway, so we are diverging, but yeah, so in those days there were people who thought they needed to isolate themselves from the world like that in order to get close to God. And in that time, Blaise Pascal had that experience with God that he describes here from 10:30 to 12:30. He just writes fire, just for 2 hours, fire. And all he writes, those are his words. God of Abram, the God of Isaac, the God of Jacob, and not the philosophers and savants. Certitude. What does it mean, certitude?
I have no idea.
Anyone know?
No.
Certitude.
I actually sort of remember that.
To be certain about something. Certitude is like to have that deep, to be certain about something, to have that deep conviction that something is real. And that came from the God of Abraham, the God of Isaac, the God of Jacob. And he writes, not of the philosophers and savants. and then feeling joy, peace. And that's how he described his experience. And so that really invigorated him to seek God and, in a different way than the philosopher and the savants. What is this? What is a savant?
Servant of the Lord.
No, savant. Like it's with, I don't know, savant? I don't know how you pronounce it. Huh? Savant?
Yeah.
How do you, anyone knows what that is in English?
It's like that.
I mean, it's written that way in English in your book, but do you know how you define this word?
Yep.
It's basically someone who knows a lot. So it comes from the word savoir. Savoir means to know. And so they would call scientists savants, those who know a lot. And he said his feeling of certitude did not come from those people who know a lot. It came from the God of Abraham, of Jacob, and of Isaac. So he developed more. He wrote a collection of thoughts, which he called pensées, and that's the last paragraph on that second page. He called it pensées. You can write it in your, well, I guess you'll find it in your book, and that means thoughts. So it was a collection of his thoughts. That's what pensée means. Thoughts. And so the bottom paragraph there it says, Pensée, a collection of Pascal's thoughts he intended to present as a Christian apology, was published after his death. In it, he portrayed humankind as suspended between wretchedness and happiness, and helpless without God. People try to avoid the abyss by engaging in distraction. Pascal denounced the idea that reason and science alone can lead a person to God. Only by experiencing Christ can people know God. And that's something that's still relevant today. You know, there are actually Christians who think by knowing more that they'll get closer to God. But Pascal denounced the idea that reason and science alone can lead a person to God. Only by experiencing Christ can people know God. Belief came through the heart, and that's why he made those kind of claims. Because the heart is almost a contrast to reason. So belief comes through the heart, and so we're on the other side of your paper now, the first paragraph. Belief comes from the heart, which for Pascal was not merely feelings and sentiment, but the intuition that understands without having to use reason. So the heart can understand certain things without using reason. And God's grace makes it happen. He says, that's a quote, do not be surprised at the sight of simple people who believe without argument. God makes them love him and hate themselves. He inclines their hearts to believe. We shall never believe with a vigorous and unquestioning faith unless God touches our hearts. And we shall believe as soon as he does so. So this is basically the Sermon on the Mount, where God says, blessed are the simple of heart. Is that how I can't remember in English.
Pure of heart.
The pure of heart, yeah. But there's a translation where he says, blessed are the simple people. And which is like counterintuitive to think that simple people, like how are simple people blessed? And that's exactly what Blaise Pascal says. He says, do not be surprised at the sight of simple people who believe without argument. God makes them love him and hate themselves. Now, who here had an experience where God made them love him, love God, and hate themselves? Did anyone ever feel hate for themselves in a way that God kind of shows off the bad stuff in their heart? Yeah? You want to share that? No? Yeah, the thing, sometimes God shows off stuff that is ugly in our hearts, and only God can show that, because for ourselves, we look at ourselves and we like, we think we're pretty good. But only God shows the ugly in our hearts and makes us love Him. What were you going to share?
Yeah, it's just the point of conviction when you realize God's standards are impossible to live up to, and we fail them every second, pretty much.
Yeah.
Not just because we're literally intentionally committing terrible acts of sin, just because our minds aren't even aligned to Him. Like, even a single thought that isn't perfectly the way God would think, it's already a sin.
Yeah.
And so,
Yeah.
Jesus.
And so God makes us love Him and hate ourselves. And, obviously, in our society, we're told we need to love ourselves, and it's true that, we need to, it's a different kind of hating ourselves. We should love ourselves because God loves us. But when God shows us a love for Him, we end up looking at ourselves and being almost, in despise compared to God. And so that's what Blaise Pascal had as an experience with God. In the Pensée, Pascal also presents his famous arguments for faith, the wager. Since reason cannot give one absolute certainty, he argued, every person must risk belief in something. When it comes to Christian faith, he said, a wise person will gamble on it, because if you win everything. If you lose nothing. So that was Blaise's argument, that when it comes to faith, you will always put your faith in something. For a while, I put my faith in my family. I thought my family, my parents and my sisters were, the best people to please. And that's where I put my faith. But when we put our faith in God, we have nothing, we have everything to win and nothing to lose. When I put my faith in my family, I lost a bunch because, my family fails me every day. People fail us, but God doesn't. So Pascal had a very frail body, and he died very young. He died at 39 years old. Who's the oldest person here? Who's older than 15? Who's older than 14?
I am 14.
You are 14? So 14, so that means, well, you're still pretty far from 39. You're 25 years away from 39, but
My oldest brother would be closer to that age. He's
yeah.
32.
Okay, so you see, imagine in 7 years from then, your brother would die. So it's a very short life for Blaise Pascal, but he had a large impact because of his experience with God. Okay, well, I'm talking a lot, but I also wanted to give you a chance to, we're going to, I wanted to give you another quote from Blaise Pascal, which I will write on the board, and you should write in your books too. It's in French too, but I'll explain to you what it means. Okay, ready? Dieu est une sphère infinie dont able to? Dieu est une sphère infinie dont le centre est partout et la circonférence nulle part. Okay, so we already saw this word. What does that mean? God. Dieu. Dieu is une sphère. This is the same as in English. What is it in English? Sphere. Yeah. So he's comparing God to a sphere. A sphere infini, so an infinite sphere. Infini. We put the adjective after the noun in French. A sphere, une sphère infinie, of which, dont, le centre, the center, est partout. What does that mean, Charles? Partout. Everywhere. The center of the sphere is everywhere. And what is circonférence? It's the same as English. The circumference? Circonférence. So the circumference of a sphere is the outside of the sphere. That's the circumference. And so la circonférence, the circumference of the sphere is, what is nulle part, Charles? Nulle part? Nowhere.
Oh,
The center is everywhere, the circumference is nowhere. So it basically explains, like I said in chapel, the name of God is eternal. It has no beginning, no end. So it's comparing God to a sphere which has basically no center and no circumference. So it's explaining the fact that God is everywhere. It has no beginning and no end. It's a sphere that has no center and no circumference. Okay, so let's try saying it together. Dieu est une sphère infinie dont le centre est partout et la circonférence nulle part. Yeah. Dieu est une sphère infinie dont le centre est partout et la circonférence nulle part. Okay, so that was another quote from Blaise Pascal. Now, I'm going to also, we're going to move away from Blaise Pascal and we're going to learn a French verse every week, every day. Because we only have 1 week. So today, our French verse is Je suis le pain de vie. And that is in John 6:48. So let's erase this. So John, the book of John in French is called Jean. Jean 6:48. 6:48. Chapitre 6, verset 48. The chapter is 6, the verset 48. Je suis le French before. What does it mean, je suis? Yeah? I am. Je suis le pain. Anyone remembers that? Le pain. The bread. Le pain de vie. Of life. I am the bread of life. That's what Jesus says. I am the bread of life. Je suis le pain de vie. And you can write down the quote too. Okay, let's practice saying it together. Jean.
Jean.
6. 48. Jean 6, 48.
Jean 6, 48.
Je suis le pain de vie.
De vie.
Je suis le pain de vie.
Le pain de vie.
Je suis le pain de vie.
Je suis le pain de vie.
Jean 6, 48.
Jean 6, 48.
Good. Who wants to try reading it by themselves? Charles?
Jean 6, 48. Je suis le pain de vie.
Très bien. Who else wants to try it? Okay, go ahead.
Jean 6, 48. Je suis le pain de vie.
De vie.
De vie.
Très bien. Who else wants to try? You want to try? Say it with me. Jean 6, 48. Je suis le pain de vie. Good. Joshua, you want to try?
John 6 has the lead. John was on David.
Yeah, très bien. There's a lot of ending consonants in French that are silent, that we don't pronounce. And so this is an instance here. The S here is not pronounced. It's written because it's part of the written word, but when you say it, you don't pronounce it. So you say je suis, not je suis. Je suis, and it's the same thing for the N here. The N basically makes the vowel nasal. Pain, it's nasal. Pain. That's the role of the N, but you don't pronounce the N, you don't say pen. It's just pen. And same thing with V, the last E is also silent. Try that again, Joshua. Je suis le pain de vie.
Je suis le pain de vie.
Très bien, very good. Who else would like to try? Manix, you want to try?
I forgot 48.
48.
Jean 6, 48. Je suis le pain de vie.
Good job, Manix. Who else would like to try? Isaiah, do you want to try? No? Okay, keep it in your notebook. Practice saying it tonight, and we'll try it again tomorrow. Okay? And now what we're going to do is, I guess maybe I was imagining that you guys had things to color, but I brought some crayons, so I'll give you some crayons, and you're going to make a beautiful verse, and you're going to decorate it so you can bring it and put it in your room, and that way you can be reminded of that French verse. And if one day in your life you meet a French-speaking person, you can tell them, Jesus said, "Je suis le pain de vie." Okay, so actually, Liam, would you mind going to get white plain paper?
What verse did you have better than it? This is the parents will ask me. In the middle.
I know which one is.
So we can use little crayons. If you
Or
have
actually, we could use little. Oh, is that? Oh, perfect. Thank you. Okay, so you don't forget to write the quote too.
I'll be back in a sec. I need that pencil sharpener.
You can share some of the colors.
We don't need any. We already have like brushes.
Oh, you have yours? Okay. Are you gonna share with Isaiah?
Yep.
You're gonna share with Isaiah and Mannix? There.
Hey, Charles. Charles, could you sharpen this one too? Right behind you.
That's fine, yeah. And you can use different colors if you like it though. There, you can share those crayons.
Oh, and these. Actually, that one's sharp and that one's sharp. That was mine. I wanted that. It did not get done.
Okay. And as you do that, I'm gonna put some French music.
So what exactly do you want us to write?
Oh, sorry, this one. This one here. Oops, I'll take the little marks off. So this is what you're writing. Okay. Yeah? You write it and then you can make different motives to make it pretty. You can draw a grid if you want.
flowers
You can
on
draw flowers. You can put little hearts. You can just put little patterns, or put a little square around the whole thing in different colors. You just be artistic with it. And then while you do that, I'm gonna play some French music.
I already said that.
Yes.
Gonna be big. Got space.
So this is French piano music. My husband is a pianist, and he put together a wonderful collections for you to hear French piano music. This is from Debussy. Debussy is a French composer.
You love Debussy.
It's not very beautiful. I'll go ask Elias for his amplifier.
It's right over here.
Oh, wow.